Hi guys, this is Fiona from IELTS with Fiona and the Members Academy. In this lesson, we're looking at an academic writing task 1, but if you're doing general training, don't switch off because there's so much language here that's useful for the listening test, and I'll refer to that as we go through it. As you know, in the listening, there are many maps of different kinds, and very often in the listening test, it's about some kind of proposed changes, which means changes that will happen to a town or a building in the future. And that is exactly what we're doing today. So the language will be really helpful, whether you're doing general or academic IELTS. So normally, well, I guess most often, maps in task 1 are called before and after diagrams. And you describe the changes, for example, to a park, and you say how it used to look and how it looks now. And you compare those changes mostly in the past. Well, this one is different, and it asks you to describe how a university sports centre will look after redevelopment. So you're thinking ahead about the future, what will happen in the future. So that is one thing you have to take into account, is the tenses that you use. If you go to my website, you can see the image, but don't worry, I'll describe it for you anyway. So the title says the plans show the layout of a university sports centre now and how it will look after redevelopment. And you look and you can see that at the moment there's basically only a pool with a changing room and seating area and a gym, and that's it. And then there are outdoor courts like tennis courts. But in the future, you'll see they're going to add a lot of things. So the core building remains, the pool, changing room, seating and gym, but they've demolished the outdoor courts and they're replacing them with a swimming pool, dance studios, extra changing rooms and so on. So you have to decide, well, what are the key features? And as I always say, first decide what will stay the same and then decide what will change. Now, because there are a lot of changes, I wouldn't worry too much about grouping them, to be honest, into paragraphs and how to arrange the information. That's really important for complex graphs and bar charts. But for this, I don't think you have to worry about it so much because there will be a lot of new things. The gym will be extended and the outdoor courts will be removed. Maybe those are the 3 key features and everything else stays the same. So we talked about the importance of time frames. So this is point number 2 in the blog on my website. The first point was getting those key features. The second point is deciding what tenses you can use for this task. Well, obviously, you use the present tense to describe how it looks now. But what do we do about the future? In the example, I think this is book 16, the example is a 6.5, but it's not quite a band 7. And one of the reasons is the overuse of going to. Going to is repeated about 12 times in that short 170 words. So the writer says things like this: the centre is going to become bigger, the gym is going to be larger, the changing room is going to be moved, There's going to be a sports shop, and so on. 2 dance studios are going to be built. It just repeats going to all the time. So we need to find ways of avoiding that. I've got about 7 or 8 options that you could use. The first one is just will. And when you listen to the listening examples about proposed developments, I would say 90% of them use will. I'll come back to that later. So you can use will, that's not a problem. You can use going to. You could say things like they are planning to, or there are plans to. So if we take just one example, they are planning to build a new sports hall. There are plans to build a new sports hall. They have plans for a new sports hall. And finally, this one is an advanced structure. And I found it actually when I was Googling models just to see what was already available online and just to make sure I wasn't copying anybody. The one I found tries to avoid going to, but instead uses this thing, this structure, all the time. And this structure is hard to explain. Let me just read it. A new sports hall is to be built. So that's advanced grammar. You would get points for it, but not if you repeat it over and over again, like this model essay does. So this model essay says, all these facilities are to remain unchanged. The gym is to be extended. The pool is to be, the outdoor courts by the pool are to be removed. The new pool is to be constructed. Probably as you're listening to this is a podcast, you're thinking this sounds a bit weird. And it does. It is advanced. So you can use it. I would just say a new sports hall is to be built, but maybe just use it once and try to use more variety with that list I gave you, with will, going to, planning to, and so on. Now, other graphs, you have more options. So I have another lesson about how to make predictions in task 1. So there you can use things like it is predicted, it is set to, and so on. But you can't here. You can really only use plan. So they are planning to, or it is planned to have a new sports hall, for example. So you're using the present and the future tense. Let's have a quick look at my point 3, which is all about prepositions. Now, I covered this in the listening lesson about maps. And if you go to my website, there's a free listening lesson that covers all of the language you need for maps. And I'm repeating this again just as a review, but you need to know the basic prepositions of place. So inside, in front of, in the middle of, at the top, near, between, things like that. You also need to know the compass points and the expressions like in the northwest corner, on the northern side, to the north of, and so on. You can also use left and right expressions, to the left, to the right of, and expressions with sides. So on the same side, on the other side, on the far side, on the opposite side. One way to practice this is to use those prepositions and make example sentences which refer to this particular diagram. For example, the gym at the opposite end of the pool will double in size. The outdoor court to the east of the building will disappear. The gym will be extended eastwards or to the east. So those kinds of examples, try to practice so you increase your flexibility with prepositions. Now, the next point, point 4, is all about the passive tense. So, quick review of the passive. Remember, why do we use it? Because we don't know who is going to build this hall. It's not important. So, the hall comes first, followed by the third form and the verb to be. So, for example, the sports hall is being built at the moment. So the verb to be changes. The sports hall was built in 1990. The changing rooms were built, and so on. So the verb to be changes, but the third form, built, does not change. And really the only one we need is the future. It will be built or is going to be built. And then there's the whole set of verbs instead of built. So you could say the courts are going to be demolished. So let's look at that now. That's point number 5. And again, I've kept these. When you look on the website, these are all in the past simple passive form, because that's the form that you normally need. But in this example later, we'll practice in different tenses. So we said maybe demolished. So the courts will be demolished. Synonyms: destroyed, knocked down, pulled down, torn down. So this is a whole group about destroying and removing things. Trees are usually cut down. Structures like statues are removed, and the area was cleared or flattened maybe. That's all about destruction and removal. There are lots of verbs also about renewing things. So these often begin with RE. For example, reconstructed, renovated, refurbished, restored, replaced, relocated, redeveloped, and other things like reconstructed, modernized, and maybe converted. So, for example, the factory will be converted into flats. Then we've got a whole group of vocabulary items which refer to making something bigger or smaller, usually bigger. So usually something is extended or expanded or enlarged. And sometimes things are kept the same. They are preserved, maybe maintained in its original condition, or retained. Many of the original features were retained, for example. And then there are the overall expressions. For example, the area witnessed or saw dramatic changes. The area altered beyond recognition. So that's point 5. That's your vocabulary of change. Now, I'm going to read out a model answer. And there are 2 on the website. I'm just going to choose one, possibly the one I think is better, I guess. So the introduction is simply the diagrams show the redevelopment plans for a university sports centre. Overall, the plans reveal that although the core features of the existing layout will remain unchanged after the renovation, the building will significantly increase in size. So that's the main overall, is it will expand. Several new facilities will be introduced, and the outdoor areas will be converted into indoor amenities. So you can see there, I've repeated will 3, maybe 4 times. So in the next paragraphs, I've tried to vary that a little bit. I've talked about the current sports centre. Currently, the sports centre consists of a single swimming pool, a gym, a changing room, and 2 large courts situated on either side of the main building. So it did say in the Cambridge book that you need to refer to how it looks now. In the proposed redevelopment, the western court will be replaced by a larger family-friendly leisure pool, complete with its own dedicated changing area. The gym is to be expanded with an extension built alongside a newly constructed sports hall on the eastern side. Notice I've said an extension will be built. So instead of saying it will be extended, I've used the noun form to show variety. Then I've put one last paragraph, the kind of extra things. Additionally, there are plans for, that's the avoiding the going to, there are plans for 2 new dance studios to be constructed, along with, so I'm avoiding repeating again, along with a 3rd changing room in the southeast corner. So notice how specific I am with these prepositions, and all of this language comes from the listening, describing maps lesson. It's all there. So you're doing 2 things at once, listening and writing. Visitors will also benefit from a new cafe and sports shop, both conveniently located on opposite sides. Again, there's the sides on opposite sides of the reception area. And that is 180 words. So if you go to the website, there's a lot of practice there, and it gives you the chance to try out your own version. But if you don't have access to that, what I would say is just do some real life practice. Think about changes in your area. Ask people what has changed and try to describe them, those changes. So where I live in Colchester, I've been here nearly 20 years and it has undergone massive change. I've written 5 sentences. Hundreds of new houses have been built. Small roads have been widened to accommodate the increase in traffic. In 2008, the bus station was demolished and replaced with an arts centre. Most of the empty buildings have been converted into student flats, and the town has grown significantly. You can see how that is connected to other task 1 graphs when you talk about changes, significant changes, and also some of the vocabulary there, like the roads have been widened. That comes up in the listening test, I'll show you. And then why? Why did they widen the roads? This is my tip. When you haven't got enough words, you explain something. You say to accommodate the increase in traffic. So that's some real life practice that you can do by yourself. But let's now, I'm going to finish, and there's a lot of examples here. So if you've had enough, just switch off now. But this is a lot of useful examples from the listening test. So I've been through all of the most recent books. I've identified the listenings where there are proposed developments, and I've listed all of the language you need, both for the listening and the writing. I'm not going to read all of these out, but you'll get the idea pretty quickly. So in book 18, test 2, section 2, there's a proposed development of Nunston. And here, most of what they say is there will be. But remember, they use contractions. I'm going to read some of them. Inside the development, there'll be about 400 houses. There'll be a clinic. And notice in fast speech how it sounds. There'll be a clinic. if residents have health problems. There'll be a community centre for people of all ages. There'll be a row of houses for residents over 65. There'll be a supermarket, and so on. And they also use a lot of prepositions. This will be on the western side. It'll be just to the south of these. The community centre will be adjoining. The clinic will be just below the lake to the right of a street of houses. So you can see how all this language benefits you. In Book 16, Test 4, they talk about the recreation ground after proposed changes. And they use different language. They say, we plan to move the cricket pitch away from the current location near the road. We've got plans for a children's playground, which will be accessible by a footpath. Now, there's the extra information, the extra words that you can add. The pavilion will stay where it is now. Then in Book 15, Croft Valley Park talks about the things which haven't changed. And it says the basic arrangement of the park hasn't changed. It still has 2 gates and a lake in the middle. Now, you can say the same for this diagram. The basic arrangement of the sports centre won't change or will not change. It will still have a small swimming pool and so on. They also say we are hoping to change the location of the toilets to bring them near to the centre of the park. Book 13, last one. It's Test 1, Proposed Traffic Changes in Granford. They say we are planning to have another set of traffic lights at the junction to regulate the flow of traffic along the high street. So there's the example of where you say to do something, in order to do something. That's really useful. At present, parking is not allowed on the high street outside the library, prepositions. But we're going to change that. There'll be a new no parking sign on School Road by the entrance to the school. And lastly, we also plan to widen, there's that word, make it wider, to widen the pavement on School Road. Okay, so yeah, I know that's a little strange listening to that if you can't see the diagram, but you can just Google it, and it's called The Layout of a University Sports Centre Now and After Redevelopment. So you can Google that and you can see the image, and I think it's on my website anyway. If you go to lessons, you'll see the image, and that goes as part of my whole theme this month about the language of health and sport. So there's the lesson from last week, which was all about reading, listening, speaking, writing, grammar, vocabulary related to health, fitness and sport. And this is probably now the final one. Do let me know if you have any questions or any special requests, and I will get them done for you. Thank you for listening. Bye for now. Bye-bye.